Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest myths surrounding savings and get real about the savings rate you need to build the life you want. At some point or another, you probably heard savings advice about setting aside 10% of every paycheck or something similar. And maybe you followed that advice, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you did follow that advice, but you still feel frustrated by the fact that you can't afford the car you want, or the house you want, or the family you want to have. Because the reality is that for most of us, a 10% savings rate just isn't gonna cut it. A 10% savings rate is not always enough to afford us the financial security we need while also affording us the lifestyle we want. Just think about it. How much is 10% of your monthly take-home pay right now? Now multiply that by 12, then multiply that by 5. Now compare that sum to the cost of all of your 5-year goals. For example, if you take home $30,000 a year after taxes, 10% of that would be $3,000. So at a 10% savings rate, you'd have $15,000 in 5 years. If your goal is to buy a home in 5 years, you're probably going to need more than $15,000 for the down payment. And that doesn't even factor in savings for emergencies, retirement, and other milestone money goals. In other words, for most of us to achieve the goals and lifestyles we really want, we need to be far more aggressive in our savings rates. Instead of shooting for an arbitrary savings rate like 10%, let's reframe our savings rate within the context of what we actually need to achieve our savings goals. Maybe it's a 50% savings rate, or maybe more. Though a 10% savings rate may be a popular savings norm, it's probably not a savings rate that will afford you your dreams. It's not a savings rate that will allow you to stop working or retire early or achieve the financial goals that matter most to you. And reality check your current course of action. In other words, if you maintain your current savings rate on your current salary, how much will you have in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years? And how does that sum compare to the cost of the lifestyle you want to live and the money milestone dreams you want to achieve? Now, how much more could you afford with a 20% savings rate or a 50% savings rate? As you project these new sums, you'll start to see how much more of your 5 or 10 or 20-year vision upping your savings rate can afford you, which can help you make saving money a true priority. Now, I know that a 40 or 50 or even a 60 or 70% savings rate sounds crazy high, especially when you're used to hearing advice like set aside 10% of every paycheck. But remember, it's all about what saving money affords you. If we're going to get real about the things we want, we need to get real about what it's going to take to get there. To do that, I'm going to ask you to completely disrupt your current status quo. That is, forget everything that you think you need or consider essential and imagine an entirely different lifestyle in which you choose to have a higher savings rate, like 40 or 50 or 60 or even 70%. Remember, this is just an exercise, so allow yourself to really go there and imagine what it would look like to live on just 60 or 50 or 40 or 30% of your income each month and save the rest. Close your eyes and visualize this radically different future. Maybe it's one in which you no longer have a car and therefore can save an extra $10,000 or so each year. Maybe it's one in which you no longer live in a big expensive city, so your basic cost of living gets cut in half. Or maybe it's one in which you move in with family to share costs as you work towards your own savings goals. Again, you don't have to be married to any of these courses of action. You just need to consider them so that you get in the habit of challenging your perception of what you can or can't afford to save. As you brainstorm these different possible futures, write down the pros and cons of each. Think through your fears and identify what it is that's holding you back from making these kinds of drastic lifestyle changes. And conversely, write down what you would stand to gain by adopting them. For example, if I'm saving 10% of my $60,000 a year take-home salary right now, and I know I need to save 45% of my take-home salary to reach my 5-year goals, I might practice mapping out a budget in which I live on just 55% of my salary or $33,000 a year. So for me, that might mean moving out of Manhattan for a few years. I might be worried about how that would affect my earning and career potential, and I'd worry about the proximity to friends and family, but the temporary change also might just be what I need to afford the down payment on the tiny home I've always dreamed of buying. Well, maybe it's time to consider getting a roommate, or selling my car, or going on a no travel ban until I meet my goals. Use this process of visualization to challenge your perceptions of what's possible when it comes to increasing your savings. Again, you don't have to commit to any of these changes, but rethinking your idea of what's normal and rejecting the standard rules like save 10% of your income can open you up to longer term opportunities you never considered possible. Maybe you'll decide that a drastic lifestyle change would be too much of a sacrifice to meet your goals, but maybe you won't. And maybe you'll find a middle ground that you never previously considered.